Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is League on Luck. We are back. Eric and Mark here with you guys doing global power rankings today, and it's a bit of a different one. I'm going to preface this because we've taken the opportunity this week where the LPL hasn't been playing and the LCK just starting back up. We're taking it to revamp our rankings. I've looked at a lot of the comments, read some things, and week 3 could have been better. We could have given some more props to teams. So we're kind of revamping. So there's going to be some movement that doesn't make sense because teams didn't play, but we just rejigged the top 20, and we're also starting in the top 5. We're going backwards today. See how people like that.
Hey, new style for the power rankings, starting at the very top. And I like this, kind of taking another chance to look at this. And that was the beauty, really, for us out of this break for the LPL and LCK, is that you do get to re-examine things like our top 20 lists and get to take another look at it and get another week of LEC and LCS action to get more evaluation through and compare it with the rest of the worlds in the leagues around the world. Excuse me.
A lot of leagues.
Hey, let's just get right into it.
And for the LPL in particular, you get a chance to look back at some of the highlights of the games that have happened this year and really examine them a little harder. But yeah, we're starting 5-1 or 1-5 if you're doing the full reverse. And what I got to start with is the games that were actually the most recent, because as I mentioned, the LCK is back and people are going to see Damwon slipping to number 3 now. Again, got to say first, the top 3 are in a tier of their own right now. They can jump around all they want, but they are in a top tier of their own. And EDG and FPX for the last 6 series have been perfect. EDG has been perfect on the year. These guys have combined for, 4 losses. So when Damwon plays a series like they did against KT, that ain't perfect.
The problem is for Damwon is when you're talking about this elite 3, right? This trio at the very top of our power rankings, all around the world. You're looking at them as unbeatable. You're talking about FPX, talking about EDG, completely unbeatable, not only in obviously the record department, which is the true measure of it, but the performance test, right? Watching them in their games, they just seem unbeatable. There's no way to get better than these squads. But then when you watch Damwon, and of course, really specifically this KT Roster series against Damwon, they didn't look unbeatable. And in fact, they were beaten in one of the games in that series.
Could have been 2, to be honest.
I mean, outside of a UCal teleport, it absolutely is a full-on loss for the Damwon squad. This is a necessary fallback in the standings for Damwon and for FPX and EDG to continue to stay above them, given you have to give that credit for how unbeatable they have looked now have been. But still, you're absolutely right that this should be the 3 that you consider at the very peak of the League of Legends mountain this year.
And them going down a spot isn't like, the demise of Damwon. They're actually not good. They're overrated. Just speaking to how good the top 3 are. And I know another thing people are talking is FPX being ahead of EDG. But EDG is the only team that's beaten FPX in the spring split. But guys, that was week 2. That was week 2. It was a close series. It was right before FPX went on their insane tear where they were playing on a different level, and Bo wasn't even in the lineup.
Right now, at the level that FPX is playing, I am very confident in having them as our number 1 team in the power rankings. But just because I'm confident in them as our number 1 doesn't mean that absolutely there's a conversation to be had for whether EDG is absolutely ahead of them or when EDG can take over that type of spot. And really the way it looks right now is I'm hedging my bets. I'm hedging that it is FPX as the number 1 squad. But we're going to have to wait and find out for when we do get the eventual mega showdown between FPX and EDG.
And EDG, they have a match against IG this week. FPX has some tough tests as well because we're getting towards the end of the spring split. I mean, there's still a few weeks left, which are plenty of games. There's actually 5 weeks. I don't know what I'm talking about. There's so much LPL left. Oh my God. But FPX plays World Elite and they also play RNG this week. So big test for them on the docket. Quickly, one more thing on Damwon before we move on, because your boy Canyon was playing Kane in 2 out of these games. We were praising Dardoch. I didn't think I'd see a Kane again this split.
I was not expecting it. It's certainly not the same look that we had or same way it was supported by the rest of the team that it was for Dardoch with Dignitas. But you like to see that aggressive play, and I think just the fact that it was picked by someone like Canyon with Damwon shows a little bit of that interesting wrinkle maybe going on with their coaching staff and the preparation heading into games. You wouldn't have expected a team like Damwon to bust out the cane.
No, but I mean, Canyon, the man's earned the right to play whatever the hell he wants, based on, the last year and a half of him playing. Still clearly the best jungler in the LCK. Showmaker picked up another MVP, now leading the way ahead of Chovy with 700 MVP points.
You put up those performances, you put up the kills on the board, you're picking up the MVP, and that's what Showmaker did just now.
The rest of the top five stays the same from last week. RNG at 4, Gen G at 5, and RNG just mentioned the FPX series is going to be the big test for them this upcoming week. They also play Rogue Warriors. Okay, if you lose that, well, then you might take a hit, but competitive against FPX, if they win, is that enough to put RNG in the top 3? I'm not so sure, but it really keeps them in that top 5.
It really feels like a win against an FPX squad is unfortunately just kind of that 1 or 2 points shy of getting into that category.
Maybe if it's just a 2-0 stomp for RNG.
Right, but I mean, again, even unlikely to count on, RNG finding a way to
very unlikely.
And get that upset against FPX at the 0-2. That's extremely unlikely given the form that we've seen from FPX and everything. RNG holding on steady right now in the top 5. Still, I think obviously important to remember for a lot of people in this top 5 is just how much of a gap there is between that top 3. And that's what we're talking about. Even a win for RNG against that very top team in FPX. I don't know if it's enough points to get you into that elite category.
Yeah, the dominance that those 3 have showed throughout the split is unmatched. Then we have Gen G, and a 5-3 record doesn't do this team justice for what they've done in spring. They are a classic case of better than their record shows.
I mean, certainly here, this is where your record does matter when we're talking about a lot of things. I mean, it matters in a lot of ways, but of course, in the power rankings, but this is where you might get some help. And this is obviously when we're talking about, well, you look at one of those losses and, well, there's no BDD. So I'm not really adding too much into that. And you look into the other losses and the series that they've played and who they're against, you're not really taking away too much from it. But then you look at their performances, their wins, the way they're getting it done, the statistics of this Gen G team, absolutely deserving of their spot in the power rankings.
And they'll probably be staying there unless they have some tough losses to some lower tier teams. But we know Gen G only loses to the guys at the top of the table. So safe in the top 5, at least for another week. Now we go 10-6, and this is where one of the bigger changes of the week are. Because I think last week and the first couple of weeks, we got it a little wrong. We didn't put enough respect on G2 and Rogue, kind of on what they did the year before, how they started the spring split. So this week, we're adjusting it a bit. We're putting them higher, especially with the weeks that they had. You combine that with maybe misjudging a little bit. So they're sitting at 6 and 7, which I think is much more where the strength is within the LEC and EU right now. Clearly, these guys are so close. You just had to watch this game this weekend. But I think this is more appropriate for where they've the level that they've played at in spring.
Right. I think this was a byproduct of, kind of starting off the power rankings so early in the year and, then trying to squeeze in, obviously, with what was going on with the LCS lock-in tournament and then the LEC starting in late.
It's so weird how many games teams have played.
Right. It's hard to balance, especially with something that is completely subjective for us as well. This is our global power ranking list. Yours can be completely different, these type of things.
Sure.
And that's where it came to the part of, trying to find that right balance for these LEC top of the table squads and where they stack up against the rest in the world. And I think you're right. Absolutely did deserve another second look and a look that does reevaluate their position globally. And they are stronger than I think that we gave them credit initially in the global scene and what their power should be able to do and how they're able to stack up. Thankfully, we get to say that this week, after a return to form for both of the two teams, because last week, not exactly the best week to put forward the argument against it.
No, obviously the combination of them playing such a high-level game against each other helps the case for them to climb up. Just also wanted to say that before, that's why some of these teams who haven't even played this week are actually moving down in the rankings. But G2 and Rogue, You had the bounce back game for Wonder on the Quinn, which has been the one real question mark, apart from, Mickey sometimes running it down. For the most part, Mickey's been one of the best supports in the league. And for Rogue, it was just incredible defense that they were able to stay in this game and avoid getting stomped early on by G2. But both of these squads made big improvements on paper, or at least improvements on paper coming into this year, and we've seen the payoff pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out on the G2 side to your boy in the jungle, Yankos. I know Yankos has gotten a lot of memes in the last year or two about his performance and these type of things, the Sejuani memes, and then
even Twitch is getting in on it and taking him down.
Yeah, making sure you're hitting all those Nidalee spears, and sure, yeah, a couple of them, whoosh, whiffing right by. That's fine.
It's a zoning spear. Zoning.
Exactly. You gotta put some credit on what he actually has done performance-wise and his impact on the games, and he has been a big difference maker for G2, especially in the past week.
And listen, Inspired has pretty clearly been Inspired, Selfmade, and Yankos in the jungle for the last full year at least, you're talking about. And they're very similar. They're very close in ranking if you're talking about those three. But yeah, to put up a performance like that against Inspired was pretty damn impressive. And really, you could highlight almost every player on both of these teams at some point throughout the split. And maybe that's why we're talking about them as the two best teams.
Absolutely. No shortage of firepower and skill on both of G2 and Rogue. One of the interesting things that when I think about these two teams and when you're thinking about the LEC and what they're able to provide, again, these type of matches that we get, the match of the week where you really get to see these two throw everything they have at each other to try and get through the win. It is some of the best League of Legends you can watch. Make sure you're not missing the LEC matches of the week, boys.
Fiesta in the best way. We need a good Fiesta that we're talking about. That's what we had. Then you have this trio of squads that all move down 2 spots, adjusting for the EU teams climbing up. And really an important thing to look at in some of these power rankings is it's a lot of hypotheticals because none of these teams are going to actually match up except for one MSI or a Worlds tournament. So you have to look at it and say, okay, this version of Hanwha, if they did match up against G2, would you really favor Hanwha? Okay. Chovy versus Caps? That's not going to be a big mid gap. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, that's really the problem when you start talking about some of these hypotheticals, right? When you're going about how you evaluate who at who and which spot in the power rankings. Yeah, a situation like that, absolutely. You're giving full marks to Chovy and what he's able to do. Even still counting that, yeah, on the other side, it's Caps. And Caps is not somebody that, maybe 2-3 years ago, you could see those type of situations, those performances come through or variance in degree. You don't see that from Caps anymore whatsoever, short up. When you're looking at these teams in this position right now in our power rankings, you feel the power. You feel that they are, have elements of their game, of their roster that are elite. Just need to put together more of the package.
Yeah, and Hanwha, we've talked about, it's just been so long. We don't have more games to talk about some of these LPL, LCK guys just because they haven't played. But, JDG and Top
and
eSports.
You want to see the continued growth, right? That's the other thing. When you talk about Hanwha, that was the big thing that we were tracking was not only just Chovy's performance, but seeing Deft return back to form and how the rest of the roster was going. And these are things that as much as we get to enjoy talking about the LEC and LCS teams making some extra performance in this week, not getting to see the continued growth from these squads due to the break in the LCK has certainly hurt.
And for squads like Top Esports and JDG, who we did have ahead of G2 and Rogue earlier, I think it was more we weighed too heavily on last year because there's no doubt we were used to having them top 5, top 3 for the entire year, basically. And there's no doubt that they can get back to that top 5 area. But we got a little ahead of ourselves with them getting to that level. JDG's well on the way. Top Esports, they're on their way. We need 2 more weeks out of them where they can keep playing at that level before we put them where we had them earlier.
I think looking back and reevaluating it had certainly the weight from some of last year's accomplishments still added to the LPL squad.
Pretty good accomplishments, by the way.
Absolutely, and then that's where you had these situations as you're talking about where you could have had Top Esports JDG ahead of G2 last week, and now we're reevaluating and saying, you know what, not exactly fair to keep those same accomplishments, same accolades with the squads. You need to prove it all over again. If we're hitting the reset button for all the other teams, got to do it in these regions as well.
But again, TES and JDG, it's just a matter of getting more games on the Rift now, because TES has a stretch where they're going to be playing, I don't want to say lesser tier teams, because, well, all the teams are good in the LPL, but we're talking LNG, E-Star, OMG, then they get IG. I mean, they could be 6-0 heading into that IG matchup, and I think there's just so much stacked talent in the LPL. People have forgotten about teams like TES and JDG because EDG and FPX are absolute machines on the Rift.
And that's really the nightmare for teams like Top Esports and JDG, is that's the expectation. That's the top, is what is happening from FPX and EDG, what they've been able to show. And then even talking about RNG, right? There's that next level and the tier. And I feel like the squads like Top Esports and JDG are just settled in that little notch right below what a squad like RNG has shown us this year.
But they can get there.
They're not far off.
Yeah.
I was going to say, the difference is that, the RNG, we're talking RNG getting the O2 against FPX. It's not enough to push them into that next tier. Top Esports at JDG taking down a squad like RNG in this type of form, absolutely enough points to get them ahead of them.
Yeah, then they'll be knocking on that top 3, waiting to get a chance at FPX or EDG, whether it's playoffs or not. Now we go the bottom 10, 22-11, where this is always where there's the most volatility, the most changes in the power rankings, because if you're in that bottom 5 of the list and you have a terrible week, see ya, man. You're out of the top 20. It is competitive. So 11, we have World Elite, who's the same as those other LPL squads we talked about, kind of sliding down just because we bumped up G2. IG stays put at 12. Cloud9 moves up 3 spots. They're in at 13. I think it's time to see how high Cloud9 can climb. And again, it's these hypotheticals, comparing to a Rare Atom or a Billy. I know it's an LPL team, guys, but you got to feel like Cloud9 would be able to match up against a team like that, right? They should beat Rare Atom.
You'd be thinking so, but I will tell you one thing. Cloud9 fans and the LCS fans can enjoy this spot in the power rankings for this week. You absolutely will not be going any higher unless there is an improvement in Fudge's performance in the top side for Cloud9. When you're thinking about where can we see improvements, how can this Cloud9 team continue to climb, be a flag carrier for the LCS, it's Fudge improving his play. And that's not meant to be, oh my God, Fudge is so bad, he's the worst part of Cloud9. No. Get that out of your heads. This is simply acknowledging that when you're looking at Cloud9, you're talking about their strengths that they have right now. Where do you need to improve to stack up against these teams that we've just talked about, the monstrous elite level players that they've got? Well, it very clearly to me is going to have to be that top lane play, because if it's not enough to withstand your boys someday, right now, with the very peak, I tell you what, it's not going to stand the very peak in the LPL or the LCK.
Definitely not. And, the squads ahead of them, IG, World Elite, or that next tier of LPL teams, definitely don't have the confidence in Cloud9 to get there yet. But 13, pretty good for them. A couple of spots below is Fnatic. And last week, the G2 win just cracked them in. They're in the top 20. They're hovering there. This week was a great step forward for them in establishing that, they deserve to still be in that top 20, climb a little bit, be more confident in them. And now, 4 games in a row, it's the longest win streak in Europe.
See, I gotta stop myself, because if I'm greedy, I want to see another big gain for Fnatic. I want to see another big week, big time performances, big carries, making your way towards getting into that conversation with the G2 Rogue, and maybe we're gonna have Schalke in that conversation.
Slow and steady.
Waiting to see stuff. But yeah, absolutely, I want that from Fnatic. What I think the expectation needs to be, or we should be getting, is slow, steady improvement. Is I think what we're gonna have to ask for from Fnatic, because I was hoping for the home run swing. That's a dangerous ask from this lineup.
Yeah, slow and steady, guys, because we know they like to take those big swings. Then you have now Team Liquid. We barely had them third still in the LCS rankings. They're not staying in the top 20. 100 Thieves take over that second spot as an NA team at number 16. Had the head-to-head against Cloud9, and you should be feeling really good with a 5-1 start. They took down Team Liquid in that match. Were competitive in Cloud9. You're feeling good if you're a 100 Thieves fan.
As much as we have faith in Team Liquid moving forward for the remainder of the year, That ain't gonna save you this week from the performances that you had and where you need to be to hold your spot on rankings. Out of here, Team Liquid. Jat and crew no longer here. It's all about Papa Smithy and the DeMonte 100 Thieves boys stepping on in style. You like what they've done? I think that this was an absolute major improvement on week number 1's overall performance level. What you're seeing with 100 Thieves, and I want to see that continue towards the next week.
And then we have BLG DRX V5. It was, again, just kind of reseeding that we wanted to look at and feel like some of these top Western teams, or at least, Fnatic, C900 Thieves, deserve to be higher on them. Then we end with the number 20 on this list. And I took a while to figure out what I wanted to put here. I was like, Mad Lions, Schalke, TSM. You can't put TSM here after 1 week. Team Liquid, no. Suning, no. So yes, we put T1. They've won 3 of the last 4. It's against Freddie Brion, and it's against Nongshim Red Force recently. But you just feel like the trajectory that T1 is going, it's inevitable. They're going to be back in the top 20. And again, these hypothetical scenarios, you match T1 against some of these other squads, you still feel like they'd win.
Hey, it's all about Zeus. And you better believe that getting to this spot in the power rankings, climbing back into this spot, has a lot to do with Zeus and Faker being back in the lineup the week before the LCK. It goes on their little hiatus. And then, of course, rejigging the rest of our power rankings, other teams losing, dropping out of it.
Schalke losing to Astralis and Mad Lions.
It's the perfect storm for T1 and the boys to slide right back in at that very end of the power rankings.
Their fingertips are at the top of the map. They're just barely peeking over to see the other 19 teams.
Yeah, so this is absolutely one to keep an eye on for sure. Of course, with T1 and their fan base, need to see a steady dose of improvement from T1, steady improvement, steady performances, and of course, a little bit of extra spice might be nice.
And I mean, really, it's just keep doing what they're doing. If they keep playing at the level they have been against Freddie Brown and Nongshim, against the better teams in the LCK, okay, now we're talking. You're going to keep climbing, and they get their first test on Friday against DRX, who's a couple of spots ahead of them on these rankings. You beat somebody above you in the standings. That's 101, how you climb these power rankings.
And it feels almost perfect. The perfect test for T1 coming out of this long break is this DRX squad, because absolutely, yeah, when you're looking at the standings, you're talking about performance over the last first bit.
Don't give them damn one yet. Ease into it.
No, exactly. This is a reasonable test. This is not fighting the very bottom, but this is someone that, you absolutely need to be able to take care of, and take care of with a little bit of style. If you're talking about where you want to be at the end of the year for T1, and you're talking about competing with the likes of Damwon, with the likes of Gen G, you're going to need to be able to stomp on the likes of DRX, even with DRX showing an improvement on what we thought they would be this year. Need to see it from the T1 boys.
And at 4-4, these games are actually important now for playoff seedings, because we're at that halfway point, and dropping to 4-5, DRX goes to 6-3. Then it becomes tough sledding to even climb up into the LCK ranking. So very big, very important week ahead for T1 and a lot of the other teams in the LCK. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. Some more global power rankings. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the flippity flip.